it dawned on me, this is a very personal story that I want to share with you today. In fact, everything I'd like to share by way of ideas actually reflects a profound personal journey I've had and a profound spiritual journey. And I guess the first piece is, I'm assuming this is not new news for anybody in the room here, to know that any and everything that is, without exception, is spirit. There is nothing anywhere on the planet that is other, nothing anywhere on the planet that is not a manifest expression of spirit. When I was a little girl, my sister and I grew up in kind of an unusual family, and I may have talked about this last time I was here. Our grandmother was a healer, and she was also, she called herself clairvoyant. I guess these days we would call her intuitive or psychic. And when I was very little, I had to make a choice. I was given the choice of either going to church or studying with her. This occurred when I was 10, and I no longer resonated with what church was teaching me. So she started to teach me when I was 10 years old. She was a theosophist and a spiritualist, I believe, although she never quite fessed up to that. But since she worked with dead people, I think she was a spiritualist. Dawned on me when I was a grown-up. But she told me very early on, and I'm not sure this was a great message for a little girl, but she said, listen, we are in an out-breath of Brahma, and when Brahma breathes out, all things come into being. And when Brahma breathes in, everything goes away. What she didn't tell me was these out-breaths last for eons. So I had a little bit of concern in the back of my mind as to when this Brahma, whoever it was going to breathe in and take everything away. But what has dawned on me in the years since, as I've matured in my spiritual life, is that for me, that out-breath includes virtually everything, even the difference. You know, we say, well, this is material and this is spiritual, this is good, this is bad. That the out-breath is all that is. So the highest, most spiritually wonderful vibration is the same out-breath as the most, base, negative, or concrete kind of energy. It's all spirit. So what if our sense of personal being is just a really handy tool that spirit uses to explore itself in form? A number of years ago, I had the image come to mind, and I still live with this, that what I actually am is a violin. My job is to stay polished and tuned, but I'm not the musician, I'm not the composer, I'm the instrument. Now, my ego didn't think that was the greatest idea when I first started playing with this, but it's become clear to me that I'm not the one doing anything. I think I am. It's a very handy thought when we want to feel reassured that we are actually in charge. But it got me to seriously living yes. And the way it got me to seriously living yes is, was I willing to say to spirit, okay, now I laugh when I say this as if I said it's not okay, it would make one little tiny bit of difference, right? I've come to the conclusion that saying yes is what we do for our own well-being so that we're not struggling so hard. But what I wanted to talk about today in particular is, where do we hold back? Where do we have hesitation, reservation, any kind of, well, you know, you could live me a little bit. I mean, I used to have a bring you to your knees speaking phobia, and I do mean bring you to your knees. It was horrible. I was scared to death to be in front of people speaking, but that apparently didn't matter, because here I am, and I spend half my life teaching now. And I had to just keep saying yes to become a better and better violin, to do the things that apparently Spirit has in mind for me. A key piece here, and you said it in one of the early affirmations and songs, there's nobody on the planet who can be the expression for spirit that you are. If you don't do it, it won't get done exactly the way you are. So even as I'm saying this, notice what you're feeling inside as you imagine that you are a unique moment in time of spirit in form, and that you are never going to be duplicated as exactly who you are. And all the talents, all the skills, all the sensibilities of you seem to be a unique opportunity for spirit to know itself in form. When we imagine, like, let me ask you, check inside. Is it uncomfortable to imagine that part of you might be holding something back? And do you find yourself kind of going, "Meh." You know, we get this little squeezing in place. Would it be all right to simply enfold that with your more expansive presence, recognizing that it's a really natural response to expansion? One of the things we know from the trauma training that I teach in is that expansion can be as destabilizing as trauma, right? We start to stretch open more and wow, the system goes, no, and you squeeze back down even harder. So it's really a gift to come up against the places in us that are filled with shame or filled with fear, because those are the places that need our enfolding presence to allow us to say yes anyway. And one of the things I've learned, and I'm looking at David thinking of what you were just saying earlier about embracing the negative thinking, not trying to push it away, that we want to enfold our wholeness in whatever we're doing. So I'm just, as I'm kind of being played right now, I'm so aware of the gift of being able to pull back and then say yes, and to pull back and then say yes. So take a moment just to notice where you might be saying, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that. Oh no, that's like more than I would be willing to do. There's a fabulous book that I'm afraid is no longer in print. I don't think it is, called The Golden Shadow. Now, most of us know about our disowned gacky stuff, right? Like we know the stuff that, get that in the background, it's not so pleasant. But The Golden Shadow is about our disowned power and how we hand that over to other people. Oh, that person can do that, but I couldn't possibly. I think it's actually harder to claim our power than it is to claim the stuff about us that's not so cool. So as I talk this morning, I just want to invite you to kind of keep tracking where you feel a pulling back and where you feel, oh, maybe a little curiosity about opening up what might be okay. A key piece, I think, I could be wrong because this is personal to me, but I think a key piece of being willing to be lived by spirit, because we're lived by spirit, willing or not, but is, are you willing to be misperceived? And are you willing to have people disagree with you, think you're a nut job, all the things that you run into when you start stepping out into being more? Because for me personally, I had an adult moment when I realized I could tolerate being misperceived. I didn't have to make it better. I didn't have to explain. I could just go, oh, well, yes. And also, for me, now I don't know what your messages are that you're dancing with, but for me was my grandmother's message that said, never, ever, ever talk about this stuff outside the house. She would be very surprised if she saw the world now. She died in 1963, and she would be really surprised if she saw that I could be up here speaking with you and it doesn't sound like I'm a nut job, right? But her message was very deep, and it started when I was really little. So I spent many years not talking about spiritual issues. I was a good, solid psychotherapist trying really hard to be reasonably sane. And I think spirit doesn't want that anymore. And I don't know how many of you agree with this, but it feels like there's a push to get serious about spirituality. When we see humanity kind of doing this split that, frankly, my grandmother talked about this when I was a child. She said the day is going to come where humans are going to face a choice, oneness or separateness. And it's going to be a really big time where it becomes very obvious that these two paths are flowing. And I think we see that all over the place now, that we're at a very powerful spiritual crisis time, not a negative thing particularly, but people are choosing where are they going to live as beings in community and in this world. So just to be aware that there seems to be a push going on for us all to stand up, those of us who are willing to anyway. I think, as I say, I think spirit lives its way anyway, but we struggle less if we can stand up and say, okay, all right, just do it. Here I am. So then with that in mind, I want to go a little farther out into the arena my grandmother said never, never talk about, which is our multidimensional world and all the support we have from non-visible dimensions. Is this all right? Yeah. Okay. So my private thought about our consciousness is that we're like a radio and we can dial in different frequencies. And part of living a conscious life for me is to be as mindful as I can be about what frequency am I resonating at in any given moment. And if I'm resonating at one that's not giving me a good experience, I'll take time to kind of shift back into another flow. I might, have you ever had a day where you're just banging up against everybody and you're not in the flow because everyone's arguing with you and you're just in a grungy, grumpy mood? If I find that, I'll sit down, or even if I'm just walking along, I'll tap into an image that shifts where I'm dialing in on the radio. So I'm in a different frequency. I think these frequencies not only have to do with essence and quality of mood, but with our perceptions. What are we aware of? So in the house I grew up in, sometimes this was really scary, not so scary anymore. The whole place was populated by beings I didn't see that my grandmother saw. I remember she used to have gatherings in her living room, and I was always the only little mini munchkin there. And she would say things I know she didn't mean to terrify me. Anxiety became my very close companion. And I sat down one day and she said, you might want to know that when you sit down in a chair, there might already be somebody in it. I was on my feet so and she said, no, not to be afraid. I just want you to know that there are beings around. Oh, thank you. That was very reassuring. But that's the world she lived in. There was a population of different kinds of beings in her world. And therefore, there have always been populations of being in my world of expectation, if not in my world of direct perception all the time. One of the things that's become so important to me as a trauma therapist, but also just in my life in general, is to always remember to ask for help. So if there's anything I could download today, it would be, please remember we are never alone for a single moment. It's just not possible. We may be not perceiving what's with us and who is with us, but we are never, ever alone. And I've built a very strong habit of asking for help. Whenever I teach, before I ever go to the teaching venue, I didn't have to do it here because this place is already full, right? But I always invite the beings that I feel work with me when I'm teaching. And the wildest thing to me, since I'm a doubter by nature, I do this all the time in the somatic experiencing trainings. Before we ever start, I have the room with beings here and there, making healing energy, blah, blah. This woman at the end of the first year of training came up to me on our very last day and she said, You know, I've been meaning to mention this to you, but since I'm leaving, I want to thank you. She said, from the very first day of the training, I love the beings you bring here. And I said, you see them? And she said, yes, I had no idea they were really real. You know, I'm thinking I'm just making something up. It makes me more comfortable. She had been perceiving them throughout the whole year of training. And I thought, all right, boy, I really do have a doubter roaming around in the back of my mind, because here I'm setting it up and I don't believe it's happening. So I really want to encourage you, whatever your line of work, whatever your challenges, ask for whatever help you need to be present to you. And it doesn't have to come from people. There are, in the tradition I was raised in, there are whole different groups of non-physical beings, some of whom are called devas. I think in Western ideas it would be angels, but devas in Buddhist thinking are shining ones. And you can also think in terms, I've kind of found two different ways to talk about some of the other beings that I work with all the time. Let's say you want to tune in on the spirit of kindness. Let's say you want to resonate with kindness. For me, that's an embodied being where I can tune in on that frequency. But you can think of it as an archetype. Think of these as living archetypes where you're aligning your radio dial to that quality. And I have to tell you, the days that I have remembered to attune to particular qualities, those qualities have traveled with me through the day, and I don't have to give it a lot of conscious attention. I've dialed it in, created the intention that I would like to resonate with that quality in the work I'm doing that day. And whether it's just my being such a good hypnotic subject, I don't know, but the suggestion, the intention works on me all day long, and I find that I'm resonating in that quality. So I'd like to encourage you to think of what archetypes bring you to life, what archetypes calm you or comfort you, what essences do you really enjoy embodying or feel that you need to embody. When you're doing your work and you're stuck, just toss it out to a bigger context and ask for help, and then see what comes, not to work at it. Which reminds me of here's a really key piece for me of consciously living a spirit-driven life and consciously not holding back. I don't know if I talked about the future self last time I was here talking, but for me, I've done a lot of work accessing optimal futures. But because I don't want to draw from what I already know, I look for the felt sense essence of a future. I don't want to nail it down, because if I nail it down, I'm going to nail it down from what I know today. And I don't want to limit that. So you're saying yes to an essence. There's a man named Brian Swim. He's a professor at a California institute. And I believe he has his degree in mathematics. He does a lot of cosmological speaking. And he, in a recent talk I watched that he gave, he was talking about the experiments done in quantum physics where they're showing how the future touches the present. And he said what I resonate with, which is you're being touched by an essence. When you reach to the future, reach to an essence. So I want to say to all of us, when we reach out for help, reach for an essence. Not just what your conscious mind thinks is possible, but to orient yourself to being willing to receive what is available. If you need an idea for a talk, if you need some kind of inspiration for a creative project, but you feel blocked, you might draw on the spirit of creativity and just say, you know what, I'm open to be touched by you. I'm open to be filled up by you. Bless you. So what I want to ask you to imagine, I'm guessing that many people in this room are already spirit driven. You've already handed yourselves over. I want to ask you to explore what happens when you do just even a little more than you thought you've already done. To pull from an even deeper place to see what synchronicity starts to open up for you. Where are you not even knowing what's possible for you? And are you willing to say, you know what? I have no idea what I can do, but I'm willing to be taken there. I'm willing to be shown what I can be, even though I have no idea of what that is. And even though I might be afraid of how is that going to change my life. I can tell you, coming from my rather advanced age at this point, I am living a life that is completely suited to me. And I've spent the last 30 to 40 years just saying yes with no plans. I get up every day and I say yes. And synchronicity and life have brought step by step the next opportunity. It's being willing to be uncomfortable and not know. Curiosity is your best companion, a willing curiosity, and a trust that life wants to live you really fully. Really fully. So one of the things that we do when we're living really fully, we're not just offering this to ourselves. We are irreducibly one. There isn't any other, right? We're in different bags of skin and bones. There is one life here today, only one. And we are never outside that one. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, has a beautiful verb I really love called to interbe. It's called interbeing, and he says, in every moment we inter-are. Notice how it feels to be aware of we inter-are every moment of all the time. And I think because we are one, when any of us dares to be more whole, more tuned in, more daring in our translation of spirit into form, we touch everyone. One of the things I've always believed as a trauma therapist, and it's gotten me through a lot of moments with people who've suffered enormously, is that whenever any one of us dares to heal even a little bit, we're touching everyone's healing process. We're creating a stronger collective capacity to heal. So for me, as individuals, and I put that in quotes, as an individual, whenever we have the courage to be more, we're opening the path for everyone, making it easier for everyone else to be more. Notice how this feels in your body right now. As I'm saying these things, what are you noticing happening inside? Especially be aware of your heart space. Because when we're scared, this happens. And if you can keep coming back to how open is your chest right now, and being willing to invite your chest to be more open. Brian Swim, there's a pretty interesting video of him, by the way, on YouTube. It's a 9-part video series. I forget what it's called. It may be called The New Story. He's talking a lot about the need for humanity to move from our awareness of ourselves as part of a human community to really move into oneness and understand that we're part of an earth community. That we're very focused on human economy, human well-being. He said we've left out bird economy, whale economy, bear economy. We've left out the economies of all the other members of our earth community. So when we're one, and we know we're one, all that we're doing all the time touches everybody. Just to notice how that feels, to know that your personal process feeds the whole planet. Not in a grandiose way, not in a, ooh, I'm so big. It's inevitable because we are one. Does that feel all right to resonate with that? So I'm guessing that most, if not all of you, dance with synchronicity quite a bit, right? Notice the more deeply you say yes, the more powerfully synchronicity dances with you. Because this is a belief. My belief is life wants us to be whole. And when we orient our intention to being whole, life jumps right in with all the support we could possibly want, even if we have no idea how that's going to happen. So saying yes is sort of its own little bit of magic, and for me, it allows our optimal future to step into the present, that we're orienting in a direct line, even though there are no lines because everything's right here, right now, but we're moving into manifesting something through us in a way that we can't do if we're going that way, that we have the support and the help from the future coming toward us. The other thing Brian Swim said that just intrigued me about life's its urgency to know itself as consciousness. He said, here we were, the planet was around for 3 million years, and 3 million years ago, life decided, for whatever reason, it wanted to see. And apparently the first eyes were created in minerals. Don't know how that worked, but over the course of a couple of million years, the Earth generated 40 different kinds of eyes. Ours come from worms that were the first apparently water-based eyes. Now, I found myself thinking, wow, life really wanted to see itself. And it worked at it 40 different times. And as Brian said, life didn't need seeing to survive. It had been surviving for 3 million years. So we are part, I think, now this is a human-centric thing I'm about to say, but I think we are part of how life sees itself. That our consciousness is part of how life feeds back. I don't know what, and I don't know for what reason, but feeds back to itself, from itself. So my feeling is, and I don't know how long I've been going on right now. Does anybody have, I can't see the clock from here. Am I good?
Don't stop.
Okay. Well, okay. So let me just see what else I might have to say. Allowing yourself from your heart to be willing to heal all the things you don't want to look at is an enormous gift to life. I remember the day I discovered that my public speaking phobia was because of shame, because you would see me, and then that would be too terrible at some level for all the childhood reasons that got created. As I healed that, and as it got safe to be with all of you, being life expressing itself every day, no matter what the day looks like, is an amazingly fulfilling adventure, because when you're living consciously, it doesn't matter if things are going well or not, because the opportunity is to bring your conscious awareness to every single moment. And a really weird thing happens when you become present to what's happening. Suddenly there's room. Suddenly there's space. Suddenly your presence, your awareness and your presence themselves are a healing force. And most of us growing up, when we are having a hard time, we move away from awareness. Awareness is the last place we want to be. Part of living a spirit-driven life is being willing to be present to all of it, to our wholeness, and to the wholeness of everybody else. Because I learned from David, repeating it to me a lot, which was really important, is that life is reflecting back to us what we haven't yet resolved or what we haven't yet recognized. When it's safe to have that reflected back, even a gacky day is pretty cool to live because you're there. And every day is a practice. There's no time when you're not there noticing. And so even in a really painful moment, the noticing is okay because it's your presence and your awareness just being willing to be lived fully in that moment. So I am going to close in just a second. And I want to read a quotation when I do, but let me just see if there's anything else that wants to speak me while I'm up here. I will tell you that everything I'm sharing with you I have lived. These are not ideas in my head. They are the wonderful, magnificent experience of being lived more fully actually than I ever would have imagined. And I think that's what has amazed me so much, is that life is so abundant and it will live us so abundantly if we'll just relax and let it. I am the queen of struggle. I am definitely the one who gets dragged kicking and screaming to each new discovery. But the good news is, even kicking and screaming, I inevitably get there and then just stand amazed at the generosity of life, the love that we all are. And when we live in a context of oneness, we are loving the whole world. I have a prayer group. We meet once a month on the phone. And when we attune to pray, we feel all the other groups all around the world who are also praying for whatever we're focusing on. Right now, we're praying for an awakened humanity and a healed planet, adding our prayers to the collective on that. But we are so connected. So please remember you are never alone. Really, not for the slightest moment. And all we ever need to do, I believe this, is ask. Be sure you spend a lot of time asking, not pleading, but saying, I could really use this right now, thank you very much. And using our new thought awareness of acting as if it's already so, you could ask by thanking whomever you're turning to for already resolving what you need guidance to resolve. So I'd like to just close with this quotation from Ghalib. The world is no more than the beloved's single face. In the desire of the one to know its own beauty, we exist. And so it is.